In the depths of a galaxy far from Earth, a vast and peaceful alliance of alien species governed the stars. The Galactic Armada was a powerful force, controlling countless worlds, each inhabited by species that had long surpassed human technology. For centuries, they had lived in harmony, maintaining balance through their shared advancements and mutual understanding. But something had changed, something unknown. A strange signal reached the Armada's central command station. It was faint at first, just a blip on their vast sensor network, but it was enough to catch the attention of the fleet's commanders. The signal didn't belong to any known species, nor did it match any of the Armada's regular traffic patterns. It was an unfamiliar frequency, originating from deep within a neighboring sector of the galaxy. "Report," the fleet commander ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. The chief officer glanced at the screens, his eyes narrowing. "Sir, we've detected an unknown ship. It's approaching our space, and it's not responding to any communication attempts." The commander's brow furrowed in concern. The Armada's ships were always prepared for potential threats, but this felt different. Unknown vessels were rare, and this one seemed to be on a direct course for their galaxy. The strange ship's technology seemed beyond anything they had encountered before. "What kind of ship are we dealing with?" the commander asked. The officer tapped a few buttons, bringing up the data on the screen. "It's a large craft. Too large for our records. There are no matches in our databases. Its energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before." The commander paced across the deck, his thoughts racing. The human race had been theorized about by the galaxy's inhabitants. Primitive, insignificant. It was a well-known belief that humans were just a young species, their technology still far behind the major galactic powers. The idea that such a ship could exist from humanity, if it truly was a human vessel, was unsettling. "Prepare a reconnaissance fleet. We need to learn what this ship is and why it's here," the commander ordered. Moments later, a small but powerful fleet of 4 scout ships was dispatched toward the unknown vessel. They moved quickly, each ship on high alert, prepared for the worst. As they approached, the silence of space felt heavier than usual. The lack of communication from the unknown ship made everything feel more ominous. Then, as the fleet drew closer, the alien ship's systems began to detect something strange. The unknown ship had stopped moving. It was as if it were waiting. The tension in the air was palpable as the ships hovered in place. Suddenly, a message appeared on the fleet's communication screens, but it wasn't a message they had sent. Instead, it was a visual display, a symbol that none of the alien commanders had seen before. The silence was broken by the deep voice of the fleet commander. "We've never seen anything like this before. Whatever it is, it's more advanced than we've imagined." In that moment, they all knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. The first encounter with the human battleship had begun, and the galaxy would never recover from what was about to unfold. The alien fleet's flagship was a massive vessel, a towering structure that looked more like a city than a warship. Inside, the command center hummed with activity. Officers sat at their stations, eyes glued to their screens as they analyzed the mysterious human ship that had entered their galaxy. The tension in the room was thick. The unknown ship had just hovered in space, sending strange signals, and the fleet had barely escaped an encounter with its overwhelming power. Commander Talder stood at the head of the room, looking over the gathered council. His face was stern, but his mind was racing. They had never dealt with a threat like this. The galactic forces had been unified for centuries, but now, a mysterious human battleship had broken through their borders, and no one knew what to do next. "I want answers," Commander Talder said, his voice firm. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" A senior officer, Virex, stepped forward, tapping the controls on his console to bring up more data. His screen showed the human ship, still motionless in space, but this time, it was surrounded by a web of energy readings. "We've tried to analyze the ship's technology, but it's unlike anything we've encountered. Its weapons are more advanced than anything in our armada, and the shield it carries, it's virtually impenetrable. The commander crossed his arms. The fleet had faced countless threats in the past, but nothing like this. You're telling me that a single human ship could have technology capable of defeating our entire fleet? Virex hesitated. It seems that way, sir. Our standard tactics would have no effect on it. Talder paced back and forth, his thoughts deep in concentration. The alien fleet was a united force, one that had dominated the galaxy for eons, but the human ship's sheer power forced him to reconsider their plans. We cannot let this ship just roam freely through our space, Talder said. We must make a show of strength. I want a squadron of our finest ships sent to intercept it. If we show our power, the humans will have no choice but to retreat. A young officer, Riz, stepped forward cautiously. Commander, if I may suggest, should we not consider a more measured approach? Perhaps we should try communication. This may be a misunderstanding. Talder's gaze turned cold. Misunderstanding? That ship opened fire on our scouts without provocation. No, Riz, this is no misunderstanding. These humans are not to be trusted. Riz lowered his gaze. The idea of attacking the unknown ship didn't sit well with him, but he didn't have the authority to oppose his commander's orders. The room fell silent for a moment, each officer unsure of how to proceed. The stakes were high. The fear of the unknown loomed over the entire fleet, and any misstep could lead to disaster. After a moment of tension, Talder slammed his fist on the console. Send the attack fleet. Show the humans that they cannot simply waltz into our galaxy and expect no consequences. We'll take them by force if we have to. With that, the orders were given. A fleet of battle-ready ships was dispatched to face the human threat. The tension was palpable as the fleet prepared to move out. They had made their decision. It was time to test the limits of the human battleship's power. But as the ships began their journey toward the mysterious human vessel, none of the officers could shake the nagging feeling that this battle might not unfold as they had planned. No one knew what the human ship was truly capable of, and that uncertainty weighed heavily on them all. The black void of space was filled with the quiet hum of the Galactic Fleet's ships as they moved toward the mysterious human vessel. The fleet commander, Talder, sat at the front of the flagship, staring at the holographic map that displayed the location of the human ship. His mind raced with uncertainty, but he had made his decision. They would confront the humans head-on. The tension was thick aboard the fleet's ships. Every officer was on high alert, and the silence was deafening. The unknown ship had only responded to their scouts with deadly force, and now it was up to them to end this threat before it could spread across the galaxy. Approaching the target, Virex, the senior officer, reported. His fingers danced over the console, adjusting the fleet's course. The human vessel is in sight. Talder leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as the human ship appeared on the view screen. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, huge, yet sleek, with sharp edges that made it appear both alien and intimidating. The ship's hull shimmered under the light of distant stars, its size dwarfing the fleet's smaller scout ships. "Ready weapons," Talder ordered, his voice calm but commanding. The crew responded swiftly, preparing for what they believed would be a quick battle. The human ship had made no effort to communicate, and they had no reason to believe it would surrender peacefully. The fleet slowly closed the distance, each ship positioned to form a defensive perimeter around the human vessel. As they moved closer, the eerie silence remained. The human ship did not respond to any communication attempts, nor did it seem to make any defensive moves. "I don't like this, Rise," the young officer muttered, his hands sweating as he watched the view screen. "It's too quiet." Before Talder could respond, the human ship suddenly came to life. In an instant, a bright flash of light erupted from its center, and beams of energy shot toward the alien ships. The beams were fast, faster than anything the fleet had ever encountered. "Brace for impact," Talder shouted, slamming his hand down on the console. But it was too late. The first blast hit one of the scout ships, tearing through its shields like paper and disintegrating it into a cloud of debris. Enemy ship opening fire. Virex yelled, his voice filled with alarm. The fleet's ships scattered, trying to avoid the relentless barrage from the human vessel. But the human ship was quick and precise. Every shot seemed to find its mark, striking with deadly accuracy. Another beam sliced through the side of a ship, causing it to lose power and spin out of control. Taldar watched in shock as the fleet was torn apart by the force of the human ship's weapons. They had expected resistance, but this was beyond anything they could have prepared for. "We're being overpowered," Virex shouted as their shields began to flicker under the constant barrage. Taldar gritted his teeth. "Return fire. Focus all fire on their central core." But no matter how many shots they fired, the human ship's shields remained nearly impenetrable. The alien ship's weapons simply bounced off its surface with no visible effect. "This is impossible," Riz cried, his voice filled with disbelief. "How can they have this kind of power?" Taldar's mind raced. They were losing. The human ship was too strong, too advanced. In all his years of command, he had never faced such an overwhelming force. With a grim determination, he barked out an order: retreat, fall back, and regroup. But as the fleet began to pull back, the human ship did not relent. It moved with shocking speed, following them, launching another round of blasts. Taldar's ship struggled to escape, but the human ship was relentless, its weapons never missing. For the first time in his life, Taldar realized they had made a grave mistake. This was no simple skirmish. The humans were not just another species. They were a force to be reckoned with. The first encounter had left the galactic fleet reeling. And as the retreating ships scrambled to escape, one thing was certain. The galaxy had just met its first true challenge. The retreating alien fleet scattered, its ships limping away from the human battleship that had torn through their ranks. The battle had been brief, but the damage was immense. Many of the fleet's finest ships had been destroyed, and those that remained were barely holding together. In the vast silence of space, the hum of the damaged ships was the only sound that filled the command center. Commander Taldar stood before a large window, looking out at the wreckage in the distance. His mind was a blur of confusion and anger. He had never imagined that the human ship would be so powerful. Nothing in the galaxy had prepared him for this. "Commander, we need to regroup," Virex said, his voice tense as he approached Taldar. "Our fleet is in disarray. We've lost too many ships." Taldar's eyes narrowed. "We cannot allow ourselves to be beaten this easily. We need to understand how they've done this. What kind of power do they have on that ship?" He turned and marched toward the war table, where a map of the galaxy was projected. His fingers traced over the glowing lines, the paths of retreating ships and the coordinates of the human battleship. "Send out recon drones," Taldar ordered. "I want every piece of information on their technology. We cannot fight something we do not understand." The officers scrambled to follow his orders, their hands moving quickly across the control panels. The human ship had fired relentlessly, but its attacks were different from anything the galactic fleet had encountered before. The beams it emitted were not like the energy blasts of known alien species. They were faster, more concentrated, and they tore through the Armada's shields as if they were made of paper. "I don't understand," Reese said, his voice shaking slightly as he watched the data on his screen. "Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. Not like this. Nothing should be this powerful." Taldar clenched his fists. "That ship's technology is far beyond anything we've seen. It's not just a ship, it's a weapon. And we're in no position to underestimate it." A young officer, Kalen, spoke up from across the room. "Commander, we've been able to track their energy readings. It's almost as if their weapons draw power from a source we can't identify. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered." Taldar's mind raced. The human ship had not only fought with brutal efficiency, it had done so with a kind of precision and adaptability that suggested it wasn't just a battle machine. The ship seemed to know exactly how to counter each of their moves, responding faster than the fleet's own ships could react. "What are we dealing with?" Virex murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "It's not just a ship," Taldar replied, his voice cold. "It's a challenge to everything we know. If we don't learn from this and adapt, we will be destroyed." As the data continued to pour in from the drones, the officers began to realize just how much they had underestimated the humans. It was not only the power of their weaponry that shocked them, it was the fact that the human battleships seemed to anticipate their every move. The technology aboard the human ship was beyond their comprehension, and the more they studied it, the more they realized that they were facing a force unlike any they had ever imagined. "Commander, the human ship is closing in again," Virex reported, his voice tight with anxiety. "They're not letting us escape." Taldar stood silently for a moment, his mind weighing the options. The galaxy had always been the dominant force in this sector. The idea that a single human ship could challenge their entire fleet was almost unthinkable. "We will not run again," Taldar declared. "Prepare the fleet. We fight. This time, we'll make them understand that the galaxy does not bow to anyone." But deep down, Taldar knew this would be no easy battle. Whatever they were up against, the humans had more power and more surprises than anyone could have imagined. The Galactic Armada's ships were battered and scarred, but they had not yet been defeated. Commander Taldar stood in the center of the war room, his eyes locked onto the large holoscreen in front of him. The image showed the human battleship, still hovering in space, as if mocking the entire fleet with its unshaken stance. "This time, we are ready," Taldar muttered, his tone dark and determined. "We will strike back. We will show them the true power of the Galactic Armada." Virex, the senior officer, stepped forward, a glint of hope in his eyes. "We've analyzed their tactics. The human ship reacts to our moves, but it's slow to respond to large coordinated attacks. If we strike in multiple directions at once, we can overwhelm them." Taldar nodded. "Send the fleet forward. Coordinate the attack. I want all ships to target their engines first, disable them. Once we've weakened them, we'll bring the full force of our weapons down on them." The plan was simple but risky. The alien fleet was much larger than the human battleship, but the humans' advanced weaponry had already proven to be a dangerous game-changer. If they could disable the human ship's engines, they would have the advantage. The alien ships would swarm, making it impossible for the human vessel to escape. As the fleet prepared for the assault, Reyes, the young officer, looked to his commander with concern. "Commander, are we sure this will work? Their shields are nearly impossible to break through, and their weapons are far more advanced than ours." Taldar's eyes were cold, but there was a flicker of uncertainty behind them. "We have no choice. If we do nothing, they'll wipe us out, piece by piece." The fleet moved out, the ships forming a tight formation as they approached the human battleship once again. Taldar watched the human ship on his screen, and this time, there was no hesitation. They had come prepared. "We'll hit them with everything we've got," Taldar said. He gave the signal, and the fleet unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, a concentrated assault aimed at the human ship's engines and weak points. The human ship responded quickly, unleashing a wave of counterattacks. Its beams of light cut through the space between them like lightning, striking two of the alien ships before they could even react. The power of the blasts was incredible, and once again, the alien fleet felt the weight of the human ship's superiority. "We've lost 2 ships already," Virex shouted, his voice filled with panic. "They're too fast, too powerful." But Taldar would not retreat. "Keep attacking. Focus on their engines." The alien ships moved in closer, trying to surround the human battleship. They launched their missiles and fired everything they could, hoping to break through the human ship's powerful shields. Then, something unexpected happened. The human ship shifted tactics. Instead of staying still and absorbing their attacks, it moved with an agility that no one had anticipated. It dodged the blasts, weaving through the barrage of energy like a predator avoiding the hunter's traps. They're faster than we thought. Riz cried out in disbelief. How are they doing this? We can't hit them. Talder clenched his teeth. The human ship was adapting too quickly, just like it had before. No matter how many ships the Armada threw at it, it seemed to always find a way to avoid destruction. The humans weren't just reacting. They were planning, calculating every move. In a final act of desperation, Talder gave the order to send their last remaining forces into close range. But as they moved in, the human ship's weapons lashed out once more, catching 3 more ships in its devastating fire. It was clear now. The human battleship was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature. Every plan the Armada had tried to execute had been countered. They had underestimated the human ship, and now they were paying the price. As the remaining fleet members began to pull back, Talder felt a growing sense of helplessness. The battle was lost. The humans had proven they were far stronger than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy was no longer as secure as it had once seemed. And now, with the human ship still advancing, Talder realized the fight was far from over. The wreckage of the battle still floated in space, a silent testament to the fierce clash between the Galactic Armada and the human battleship. Commander Talder stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the debris field. His mind was clouded with uncertainty. The fleet had been severely damaged, and the once proud Armada had been humbled by a single human ship. The room around him was tense. The officers who had once been confident in their strength now exchanged uneasy glances. They had never faced an enemy like the humans. No one had expected their technology to be so advanced, their tactics so precise. The Armada had underestimated them, and now it was unclear what the next step should be. Commander, Virex spoke cautiously, his voice betraying the anxiety everyone in the room was feeling. We've lost half of our fleet. The remaining ships are heavily damaged, and we failed to break through their defenses. What do we do now? Talder's fists tightened at his sides. We've underestimated the humans. This is not just about power. They have something more, something we can't predict. A quiet murmur swept through the officers. The idea that the human battleship was more than just a weapon, that it was somehow a step ahead of them, was starting to sink in. We cannot let them get away with this, Reese said, his voice full of frustration. We cannot let them think they can just waltz into our galaxy and destroy everything we've built. We need to strike back, harder. Talder shook his head. We don't have the strength left to attack, and if we push forward without knowing more, we'll be wiped out completely. The weight of those words hung heavy in the room. The commander's instincts were telling him that their next move would be crucial. But the decision was not his alone to make. A voice spoke from the back of the room. It was Kalen, the youngest officer, who had always been eager to learn and prove himself. Commander, perhaps we should consider a different approach. We've seen what their ship can do, but we haven't even tried talking to them. Maybe we can open a dialogue. Maybe they don't want war. Maybe they just want to be heard. Talder's eyes snapped to Kalen. You want to talk to them? He asked, disbelief evident in his voice. After everything they've done. Kalen nodded. We don't know what their intentions are. Maybe they don't want to destroy us. If we keep fighting, we'll only escalate things. What if they've been forced into this? What if their technology was a defense mechanism and not an offense? Virex looked skeptical, but didn't speak. Reyes, however, scowled. You're suggesting we try diplomacy with an enemy who merely wiped us out. We've already seen what happens when we give them an inch. Talder stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room. He had led countless battles, but this situation was unlike anything he had faced before. They had only seen the surface of the human threat. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more at play. The human battleship's power, its precision. It wasn't just military superiority. There was something else in it. Intelligence. Purpose. Maybe even a message. I'll consider it, Talder said finally, his voice quiet but firm. Prepare a communication envoy. We'll offer them terms, but make no mistake, we'll be prepared if this is just another trap. The officers nodded, the tension still thick in the room. As they began to prepare for this new course of action, no one was sure if it would work. The fear of the unknown hung over them. The galaxy had never faced a species like the humans, and even if peace was a possibility, there were still many questions left unanswered. For the first time, Talder allowed himself a brief moment of doubt. Were the humans truly just a force of destruction, or were they something entirely different? Only time would tell. As the fleet began to move forward once more, the possibility of peace remained on the table. But it was clear, the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The humans had made their presence known, and the Armada would never look at the stars the same way again. The Galactic Armada was battered, its pride shattered by the overwhelming force of the human battleship. Commander Talder had made the decision to try diplomacy, but the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty. After suffering such a crushing defeat, how could they possibly trust the humans? Still, the commander believed that they had no choice but to try. The risk of further conflict was too great. The officers worked quickly, preparing the communication envoy. A small, heavily guarded fleet of ships was chosen to carry their message. Talder stood before his crew, his eyes scanning the faces of those who had once been certain of their supremacy. "We approached them cautiously," Talder began, his voice steady despite the doubt creeping into his mind. "We offer them peace, but we remain ready to defend ourselves if this is a trap. We've seen what they are capable of, and I will not make the same mistake again." Virex, the senior officer, gave a quick nod. "We'll stay on high alert. I'll make sure our ships are fully prepared for anything." Talder turned to Rice, the young officer who had questioned the decision to attack earlier. "Riss, you'll be part of the envoy. You've seen their power firsthand. You know what we're up against." Riss swallowed hard but nodded. "Understood, Commander. We'll be careful. But I still think there's more to them than just power." With that, the small envoy fleet set out, moving carefully toward the position of the human battleship. As the ships neared, the tension in the air was thick. Every officer on board the envoy's ships felt the weight of the unknown. What would the humans do? Would they accept the offer of peace, or would they strike again? As the envoy arrived at the coordinates, the human ship loomed large in front of them, silent and still. The sight of it sent a shiver down Rice's spine. It was impossible to ignore the sheer power it radiated. But this time, it wasn't attacking. It wasn't firing. It was simply waiting. Talder gave the signal to initiate communication. The ship's main communication officer activated the console, and a screen lit up with a single, simple message in the human language. "We are ready to talk." Talder took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that could decide the fate of the galaxy. He stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding as he spoke. "We come in peace. The Galactic Armada offers a truce. We have witnessed the power of your ship, and we wish to understand you. We do not seek war. We seek a solution, a way to coexist." The screen flickered, and a human voice responded. The voice was calm but firm, filled with authority. "You offer peace now, but what of the destruction you caused in your attempts to fight us? Why did you attack in the first place?" Talder's heart skipped a beat. He had anticipated the humans would question them, but hearing the calm judgment in their voice made him realize just how much they had underestimated humanity. "We acted out of fear," Talder admitted, the weight of their mistakes pressing down on him. "We didn't understand your power, and we feared what we didn't know." There was a long pause, and Talder could feel his breath catch in his throat. Were the humans considering their words? Would they accept this fragile offer, or would they dismiss it outright? The human voice came again, slower this time. "You fear what you do not understand. Perhaps that is a mistake we all share." With that, the screen went blank. For a moment, no one moved. The silence stretched out, leaving the crew on edge. Finally, Virex spoke. "What does this mean, Commander? Are they agreeing to our terms?" Talder stood still, staring at the darkened screen. "I don't know," he said softly, "but it seems like we've taken the first step toward understanding each other." The unknowns were still vast. The fear, the uncertainty, it hadn't gone away. But now, there was a possibility. The humans had not rejected them outright, and in that, there was hope. For the first time in days, Talder allowed himself to relax just a little. The war was not over yet, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way forward. The quiet hum of the flagship's engines was the only sound in the room. Commander Talder stood in front of the large view screen, his hands clasped behind his back. The silence in the room was thick, and every officer aboard the ship was waiting for the next move. After their last attempt to engage the human battleship, the situation had shifted. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about the future, what the galaxy would become in the face of such an unknown power. "Commander," Virex said, breaking the silence, "the humans have agreed to meet in person. They've offered to send a representative to our station for a face-to-face conversation. It's not a complete victory, but it's a sign that they are at least willing to listen." Talder nodded, still uncertain about what to expect. "And if this is a trap, what then?" "We'll be ready," Virex replied firmly. "Our ships are prepared. If they try anything, we'll defend ourselves." Talder turned and faced the officers in the room. "We've come this far, and we cannot afford to make another mistake. If we can't understand the humans, if we can't learn from them, we will fail. I want the best of our fleet to be ready. We must show them that we are not enemies, but allies seeking peace." The tension in the room remained, but the officers were beginning to believe in the possibility of a different outcome. A peaceful resolution was still unlikely, but now there was hope. Hope that they could find common ground, despite the vast differences between their species. Hours passed, and then the message came. The human representative was on their way. The flagship's air was thick with anticipation as the alien officers prepared themselves for the first direct contact with the humans. Commander Talder's thoughts were clear. This was a moment that could change the galaxy forever. As the human representative arrived, the tension reached its peak. The airlock doors opened, and a tall human figure entered the room. Unlike the soldiers and warriors they had seen before, this human was dressed in simple but sharp clothing, his demeanor calm and collected. His eyes held no malice, only curiosity and focus. He spoke in a clear, steady voice, his words precise. "I am Director Lucan," the human said. "I represent the human forces and the colony ships. I've come to understand why your fleet attacked us and what your people want. I believe we can reach an agreement, but first, we must recognize each other as equals." Talder studied the human carefully, sensing a quiet power behind his calm words. For the first time since their encounter, he felt as though they were facing not a force of destruction, but a force of reason. "We did not understand your power," Talder admitted. "We acted out of fear, but we wish to move forward, to find peace. We are ready to listen." Lucan nodded, acknowledging the alien leader's words. "Fear is a powerful thing," he said. "We all feel it when we encounter the unknown. But the way forward is not through more battles, but through understanding. Humans have always learned by facing the unknown, and we do not want to fight anyone unless we must." The two leaders stood face to face, and for a brief moment, the gap between their species seemed to vanish. The human's calm demeanor and willingness to talk shifted something inside Talder. They had not been defeated. The humans had not come to destroy. They had come to understand. In that moment, a new possibility emerged, a chance to forge a relationship, one that could alter the future of the galaxy. As the meeting progressed, both sides shared their thoughts, their fears, and their dreams for the future. The human representative spoke of cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual growth. Talder, though cautious, found himself considering a new way forward, a way that didn't involve war or destruction. By the end of the meeting, Talder knew that this was just the beginning. There was still much to learn, much to overcome. But for the first time, the galaxy's future felt open, full of possibilities rather than conflict. As the human representative departed, Taldar turned to his officers. "This is not the end. It's the beginning of a new era. We've seen what the humans are capable of, and now it's time to see what we can build together." The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. And this new era, one of potential and understanding, had only just begun. Weeks had passed since the meeting between Commander Taldar and Director Lucan. The once feared human battleship had become a symbol of change, and though the initial shock of its power had not faded, there was now a sense of cautious optimism in the air. The war that had seemed inevitable just a short time ago was now a distant thought. The question was no longer if the galaxy could defeat the humans, but how the two species could find a way to work together. But not everyone in the Galactic Armada shared that optimism. The peace talks had been tense, with many in the higher ranks still distrustful of the humans. The fleet had been defeated before, and there was no certainty that this fragile peace would hold. Commander Taldar stood in the war room once more, looking at the faces of the officers gathered around him. The same officers who had seen the human power firsthand and had been forced to confront the unimaginable. Now, they were debating what to do next. "Commander," Virex began, his voice firm, "we've been talking about peace for too long. We've given them a chance, but their presence is still a threat. Their technology is far beyond ours, and if they decide to turn on us, we won't have a chance." Taldar's eyes narrowed. "I understand your concerns, Virex, but we cannot act out of fear. If we do, we risk destroying everything we've worked for. The humans have offered us peace. They've shown no sign of aggression since that first attack. We have to trust that this is not a trap." "But what if it is?" Rice spoke up, his voice tense. "We've seen what they can do. One ship took down half our fleet. They could wipe us out in an instant. How can we risk everything on the possibility that they truly want peace?" Taldar held up a hand, silencing the room. He understood their fears. He shared them. But the way forward was not through more battles. It was through understanding. "We are not the only ones involved in this," Taldar said, his voice calm but strong. "The humans are not alone. They have colonies. They have allies. If we push them too far, we risk war with an entire human alliance. If we go to war now, we'll be fighting not just one ship, but an entire force we are not prepared for." The officers exchanged glances. Taldar's words carried weight. The humans were not just powerful, they were united. To face them now, without knowing the full extent of their strength, would be a deadly gamble. "I suggest we send another envoy," Taldar continued. "But this time, we must be prepared for any outcome. If the humans are truly as powerful as we think, we need to show them that we are not their enemies, but we are not afraid." Virex nodded slowly. "You want to risk another encounter? After everything we've seen?" Taldar met his eyes. "Yes, we must. The galaxy's future is at stake. We cannot let fear dictate our actions." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. It was a gamble. It always had been. But the thought of war, of more destruction, of losing everything to fear, it was a path that Taldar could not walk. "We will approach the humans once again," Taldar declared. "This time, we will bring peace, but we will also be ready. If they turn against us, we will be prepared. But we must give peace a chance, no matter how small that chance may seem." As the officers nodded in agreement, Taldar felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. This was the turning point. This decision would either mark the beginning of a new era or the end of everything they had worked to protect. The envoy was sent, and as the ships moved toward the human position, the tension grew. Would this be the start of a new chapter, or would it lead them back into the darkness of war? Only time would tell. The fate of the galaxy rested on their next move, and every officer aboard the ships knew that this encounter would decide whether peace or war would reign. The galaxy had always been a place of conflict. For centuries, the Galactic Armada had ruled with unchallenged power, bringing peace through strength. But now, everything was uncertain. The human battleship, a symbol of unimaginable strength, had shattered that illusion. Commander Talder knew that whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. The small envoy fleet moved slowly toward the human ship, the tension in the air thick with anticipation. As they neared, Talder stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the view screen with a calm expression, though his heart raced. This would be the final meeting, the moment that would decide the fate of not only the Armada, but the future of all the species in the galaxy. "Commander," Virex said, his voice laced with unease, "we've reached their position. The human ship is in sight." Talder gave a short nod. "Prepare the communication channels. We are going to make contact again. This time, we must make it clear that peace is our only option." As the fleet drew closer, the human ship appeared on the screen. It was the same as before, massive, sleek, and almost overwhelming in its presence. But this time, there were no weapons raised, no threats. The human ship was calm, almost as if it was waiting. "Open the channel," Talder ordered. The communication officer hesitated, then activated the connection. The screen flickered, and once again, the human representative appeared. It was Director Lucan, his calm demeanor unchanged. "Commander Talder," Lucan began, his voice steady, "I see you've come again. You have shown us the respect of trying to understand, and for that, I thank you. We are ready to discuss your proposal." Talder's heart raced as he stepped forward. "We offer you peace. We offer understanding. The Armada was wrong to act in fear. We are ready to find a way to work together, to build something stronger than just strength alone." Lucan regarded him for a long moment. Then, he nodded slowly. "Peace is always the better choice, Commander. But peace is not something that can be taken lightly. It must be built on trust. And trust cannot exist where fear rules." Talder clenched his fists at his sides. "We have learned from our mistakes, and we are ready to change. Our people, all the species in the galaxy, need this peace. We will do whatever it takes to make it last." Lucan's eyes softened slightly. "It is good to hear that. The humans are not here to conquer, Talder. We are here to explore, to understand. And we want to build that understanding with you." There was a long silence, the weight of their words hanging in the air. The galaxy had never faced a moment like this before. Could they truly trust the humans? Could they take the risk of forging a future that was uncertain, filled with unknowns? Talder's voice broke the silence. "Then let us begin this new era together. Let this be the start of something greater than any of us have known. A future where we all thrive, not through war, but through cooperation." Lucan's smile was faint but genuine. "We will begin together, Commander. A new chapter for both our people." As the communication ended, Talder felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had taken the first step. The hard part wasn't over. But now, there was hope. A chance for a future without war. A chance for unity. The galaxy would be different. But maybe, just maybe, it would be a better place. And that hope was worth fighting for. As the alien ships moved away from the human vessel, Talder stood tall, looking out into the vast unknown. He couldn't predict what the future held, but one thing was certain. Peace had been given a chance. And that was enough for now. The galaxy had entered a new era.